Thank you. Can I ask each one of you to introduce yourselves very briefly before we start? Sister Wonke.
Hi, beautiful people. I'm Mamutoko Njenga. I am a member of SAGA, South African Guild of Actors. I am an arts activist. I direct, I act, I do lots of things on and off stage. Community developer as well.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Onge Dumeko from the NFVF. I am the head of operations there.
Good morning, everyone. Sorry, I hope you guys can hear me. I think that's clear. I am Ayanda Sibisi. I am a filmmaker. I'm also a producer who tries and tells stories using social change. I'm also the interim general secretary for the Independent Producers Organization.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Zanele Mtembu, and I'm the acting program manager for SWIFT, but I'm also a lecturer and an executive producer in the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Our topic today is about creating respectful work environment. And Mamutoko, you have over 4 decades of experience in this industry. I'm not going to ask you a question. I just want to know that of all the years you've been in this industry as a seasoned actress, director, activist, just tell us briefly about your experience in terms of safety in this
Thank
industry.
you. Yes, over 4 decades in the industry. My journey. Before I talk about my journey, I actually would like to touch on how far this industry has gone. To talk about, there was a question at some point that says, are we winning? We work in an environment where there's abuse, disrespect, there's so much that we have to deal with, and yet we're too scared to say no. In my time, I worked under conditions where people were auditioned on the couch. You didn't stand in front of a camera. Somebody would invite you to come to their place, to come and chat, maybe get some drinks and whatever. You wake up where you didn't want to wake up, and then you get the next few calls that you get would be 5 or 10 for all that ordeal, and then there's no job. And are we now winning the fight? In the 48 years that I've been in the industry, I believe we are winning the fight. I believe there's a lot that has been done to try and save, especially a girl child in the industry. You find that you want to work, you want to be creative, but there's so much on that particular set that you are on that you are scared of. We are programmed to lean towards all the wrong things. We are programmed to be scared. You're scared because if you say no to something, then you don't get the job. Back in the day, I think I was amongst the first people to work on a TV series that gave me a contract for 12 months. A 12-month contract meant listening to Afrikaans when I'm not Afrikaans speaking, try and speak Afrikaans when I'm not Afrikaans speaking, try and listen to the conversations around me and not really understand, and go on set and be creative. But I was fortunate that the producer of that TV series understood. And also because I used to speak out. I walked into his office one day and said, do you really think this TV series does not need isiXhosa in it? I'm Xhosa speaking. I can't chat to anyone on the set. I do understand because I grew up in the Cape, I was born this side. So I do understand the language, but don't you think we should be having other ways of interacting? And Franz Marx decided to employ someone to come and coach me on set. Those are the things that make me feel we are winning. If somebody says, let us do it. My boss used to come into the studio wearing the AVB uniform. To any black person or colored person, that is scary. Because all you know is Ter Blanche riding a horse and beating up black people. So I walk into his office and I say, sir, this uniform intimidates me. Are you sure there's nothing you can do about it? And then he invites me to dinner. We talk about it, where I come from. My grandfather used to be in jail for politics. Where I come from, I was taught by nuns. Where I come from, I had to change schools from Port Elizabeth to Kirkwood, back to Cape Town, to Johannesburg, because you did not have a stable home. Okay. And then he understood from that day onwards. Franz Marx himself wore black pants and black shirt because he believed that for his actor to survive on his set, he needed to listen. I come from a time where the actors themselves discriminated against each other. If you were Xhosa speaking, you were forward. You did not need to be on this set. Nobody liked you because you spoke isiXhosa. And in Johannesburg, all those languages were spoken around you. But because as an artist, as an actor, you want to learn. You sit, you listen, you go and get somebody to teach you. I come from a time where there was very little money for an actor. Today, when I see smiles, when people have been paid, I feel we are winning. I can't say we have won because there's still a lot that needs to be done, but we are winning. We have now organizations like USAGA. That poster I asked to be hung there because as an artist, you now have someone to talk for you, someone to assist you, someone to be able to be your voice.
So we're going to come back to
Thank
some
you.
of those experiences.
Thank
You so much for that. I just want to fast track to Ayanda as a young producer today and your views, your experiences about safety in the working environment, particularly for women and particularly about sexual harassment.
Thank you so much for that, Sis Lindy. And I want to echo some of Sis Togo's words just to say that I do think that we are winning, and I do think just as a young individual specifically, I think there are digital tools right now. There are social media platforms, which probably was not there during the time of Umam Togo. So more than anything, how do we then use the resources that we have around us to create awareness, to create accessibility, to allow young professionals that are coming into the industry to be able to voice out their concerns? How do we use organizations specifically, such as your SAGAs, such as your IPOs, specifically to also spread awareness and create that as a platform for young individuals to be able to share their experiences? Secondly, I'd also like to mention to say that I think as professionals in the industry, and I do know that I'm sitting here on a panel with expertise who have been also in the industry, but how do we then look at policies specifically within the industry? We know that our industry is not particularly governed with protection laws, but how do we then as organizations develop specifically those policies that will enable young individuals that are coming into the industry, or even individuals who've been in the industry for over 20 years or decades. I also think the second thing, and I do think, for example, SWIFT started a really great program in terms of creating, firstly, educational awareness and also training programs. I know now that as young individuals, we're able to go into a space, whether you've got a particular role, but there will be, for example, somebody who is skilled, who is accredited to specifically take you through, to say, these are the training programs specifically in the industry to help guide. I don't know if I can answer the question, because I think Omam Togo started off quite well and saying, are we winning the fight? But I do think right now, I will mention, for example, just looking at the landscape in South Africa, just in terms of the unemployment rate. I think those are things we should factor in to say that some individuals do feel, especially young coming into the industry, desperation, and some people do exploit that. How do we avoid that? But just in general, winning the fight, I think we are creating platforms, but I think it's up to us who are here in the room, outside of this room, to spread awareness, allowing accessibility of those platforms that we speak about, because it is very difficult to speak on anything, you know, whether it is a sexual harassment issue, whether it's an issue to do with a payment, whether it's an issue that you may have with a particular crew member. How do we then ensure that we're creating a space for individuals to be able to voice their concerns? I think as young individuals, as much as we can say that we are coming into the space using social media, but I do think that there isn't as much awareness about it, and it is something that we can create using digital tools, since we are in a very high digital area. But I do think we are getting there. We are creating the platforms. Are we creating the policies? Yes, but the implementation is what needs to take place.
Zanele, if I can jump quickly on to you, I mean, moving on from what Ayanda has mentioned and what SWIFT has created, the initiative that I think it's groundbreaking for the industry. If you can just briefly explain the Safety Contact Officer program, and if really is there an uptake in the industry for that program?
Thank you, Lindy, for that question. You know, a lot has happened since SWIFT launched the Safety Contact Officer program. And just to explain the program itself, was that SWIFT created awareness about the code of good practice on the prevention and elimination of harassment in the workplace, which is based on the Employment Equity Act. So that's the first thing we need to be aware of, is that there actually is law in place that protects us as individuals in the industry. However, what was missing was, if I am harassed, yes, I'm aware of my rights, but what then do I do, or where do I go to report? And that's when SWIFT introduced the Safety Contact Officer program. And the Safety Contact Officers are individuals that, at first and foremost, are themselves professionals. They are either social workers or counselors. So they are already governed by a code in terms of confidentiality, right, as practitioners. And they are also trained in the legal framework of sexual harassment to know exactly what to do when you report sexual harassment. So that was introduced in 2018, first as a pilot study, and then we realized that after the pilot, we saw that there is definitely a need to then make sure that there are more safety contact officers. To date, we have 8 safety contact officers. We have in Johannesburg, in Durban, as well as Cape Town. So these are individuals that can be contacted when you have a complaint about sexual harassment. And you don't have to be a complainant or someone that has been harassed on set, but also as a witness. You know, you've witnessed sexual harassment and you want to report, you want something to be done with it. And I think that's also very, very important, that combating sexual harassment is a collective effort. It's not just about the person that is being harassed, but it's also about us who witness it and keep quiet, because that is what then creates this environment, help create this toxic environment on set because we keep quiet. So the safety contact officers are there, and first and foremost, we want to make sure that each and every production where you are working adopts the code. And that code is attached to your contract, because that is your protection as a freelancer in the industry, to have that code. That's the first thing. Secondly, you also want to encourage and we're using these words encourage because right now we're not regulated, right? We cannot enforce these things. But if we mobilize, and I'll use the word deliberately, mobilize as an industry to push for these things, that's when we can begin to see change. So you also want to make sure that the production that you are on really gets the services of the safety contact officer to be on the production and assist. The reality is that when sexual harassment happens on sets, the HODs, the producers, they are really not equipped. They do not have the capacity to deal with these complaints. They just are not capacitated to do that. That's why in most cases it's rushed through and kind of swept under the carpet, because there's so much to deal with on the production itself, and they don't have the capacity to deal with it. But the safety contact officers then can come in and assist to make sure that the complaints are investigated, and there's a record of what has happened, and the individual is assisted on the production itself. So to get hold of the safety contact officers, you have to contact SWIFT, and we can allocate a safety contact officer. Most importantly, you also have to encourage your production company to have a sexual harassment workshop before production starts, so that there is awareness that is created about what is sexual harassment, how do we identify it, and what should we then expect once we have reported the matter. So that's in its entirety, as briefly as possible, I can explain the Safety Contact Officer program. And know that when you report these things, you have the backing of the law in terms of the Employment Equity Act. You know, it's something that is there to protect you.
Thank you. Just taking from what everyone has said, Onke, you know, lobbying, championing, policies, changing, you know, experiences from what Sistogo mentioned. NFVF is a national body for the industry. And I know, you know, we have, SWIFT has got MOU with NFVF. Your take in the coordination or the championing of this kind of issue in the industry, maybe towards policy, is it just your views as NFVF?
Thanks, Ms. Lindy. So you're correct to say we're a national funding body, but we're a national funding body with a provincial budget, if not less. There's a film commission that has, their budget is 5 times ours for one province, and we have a national mandate. So at the heart of the matter, I have to start my statement like that because it makes a huge difference. Now, it doesn't mean there aren't solutions that can be explored, but it's important to understand the context, especially in the reality of the country we live in today. In South Africa, on average per year, you have about 53,500 people who will have had some type of sexual harassment that they would have experienced. That's based on what has been reported, right? So it's not necessarily based on what has happened and what people did not have the courage to report. It's based on reports, 53,000. 80% of those relate to rape. So that's the microcosm of, that's the country you're living in, And then obviously you have to dovetail that to whichever industry you're in, which gives you an understanding of how important this type of program, these type of efforts are, right? Going back to even things such as, Swift's collaboration with IPO, with the intimacy protocols, right? She was mentioning the policy intervention. We've done some things, like Sisanele was saying, we've done some things in our NFF policy to make sure that at contracting stage, you have to commit to the program that Swift already has in place. Now, it's a commitment. It's nothing that can be guaranteed. So what needs to happen is a very strong shift towards people actively changing the space around safety on sets. One of the ways you do that is to make sure that you have way more people that are trained in this regard. Way more people that are trained. An intimacy coordinator, someone who's trained to make sure that the sets are safe, all of those different types of skill sets that you have ultimately are jobs in this industry. We're talking about an industry where obviously the value, the money in it, there's always complaints about it. One of the best ways to increase that investment in the industry is to always show the value that it can create, is to qualify that industry. And you qualify that industry, one of the ways to do it is through jobs. Can you imagine the number of people that you can have in this industry purely by being trained in that ambit? Purely by being trained. So that as much as the statistic of 8 individuals is an incredible statistic to have, you can multiply that. But that requires funding. That requires funding. And the more you build a case to say, here's another skill set in this industry. This is the number of people that are being trained. This is the number of people that are changing the face of how productions are completed, right? Are changing the face of how people feel on sets, are changing the number of people that agree to take on certain roles because they understand that they're walking into an environment that's safe and that accommodates them. Eventually that builds the type of perspective, it builds the type of perspective of an industry that is creating different avenues of employment, creating different avenues of opportunity. So policy intervention is one thing, and that's something that takes time. But I think in this industry, we don't have the luxury of time. We need things that have to happen concurrently. We need to find opportunities where there can be additional funding in, for example, in NFEF, there are different special projects that exist, but it takes a proposal to say, this is a program that has been happening for X years. These are the number of organizations that have collaborated. Even at some point, NFEF and IPO and Netflix collaborated on a program. This is, for intimacy coordinators, this is the vision to where we're trying to get. Because ultimately, the more safe sets you have, the more sets you can have, which means the more type of productions you can have. It's a very disheartening thing when you hear something in the media that says people were shooting. There was a story in the media a couple of, I think it was just over a year ago, where they were shooting a music video, and people were raped on the set, and it was a huge splash in the media. That's a huge blow to the industry. It's a huge blow to the industry. So there needs to be a bit more of an aggressive drive towards upping the number of people that are trained. You up the number of people that are trained, you up the number of people that are employed. Not necessarily at the cost of the production company, because obviously that's a big barrier to entry. It needs to be at the cost of a different organization or an entity, like the NFEF, like the whatever, right? But because then that's when we show our support in real terms. Yeah. Because we don't also want to have a clash with production houses saying, oh, my budget is so limited, I can't. No. We will help you in this process. We will help you make it happen, but it's going to happen in an aggressive way and not
not otherwise. But before I come to you, Sis Toga, just to also maybe now think about implementation and the way forward. Onke, you talk about budget, you talk about training, and you talk about the uptake. And what SWIFT has done and we continue to do that at a strategic level. We've spoken to broadcasters, your MultiChoice, your SABC, your Viacom. We've spoken to just about everybody to come and get the entry at that level so that the SCO program gets funded, as you're saying, gets funded from that level, because producers don't have, the funds. But if the broadcasters and the investors and the funders can allocate that budget from that angle, then you get the training, of the SCOs, then you get the service of, and there is just no uptake.
Yeah.
There is just no uptake. I mean, I was looking at, we've just done a survey, and we've got the prelim numbers now. And I think there's a confusion between the intimate coordination, which Zanele maybe can explain later, and the SCO program, and they're both needed in the industry. So, and I just wanted to flag that.
Can I just come in there, right?
Yeah.
And that's why I exactly said what I said,
But the
right?
budget.
Because in order to get the buy-in, it needs to be approached in a different way, right? To say, listen, we're not going to put the pressure on you now. Let's facilitate it in a different way. Because ultimately, look, the thing is that what these programs are trying to do, they're trying to combat something that is a national issue. Sexual harassment is an issue in this country.
Yeah.
So if it's a national issue, why must it be, let's not contain it to this industry, right? Where's social development? Department of Health. It's not an issue that is confined to this industry. These programs are solutions to combat that in the industry, but they're not combating as a solution. They're not combating issues that are unique to this industry. So I think what may potentially help is positioning it in a different way, and also lobbying for that type of funding from different sources that don't necessarily typically sit inside this industry. Because ultimately, if you're combating sexual harassment, you're combating sexual harassment. Whether it's in the context of the film industry or it's in the context of any other industries, neither here and there, this is what you're combating. So the funding should not necessarily, should reflect from organizations that are outside of this industry, that have that mandate.
Which we've done, by the way. We've engaged
Yeah.
gender-based violence, GBF, we've engaged, but I think Zanele will speak to that. Sister Togo, I want to come back to you before we go to the audience and maybe talk about, I don't know how much you are active in the industry now, but with all the challenges and what has been spoken and what you have outlined, what do you think, and I think Onke has touched on some of the solution and the implementation. How do you see this industry address the question of safety?
I feel, I think earlier on, I did mention how we are programmed into believing certain things about ourselves. We are programmed to be scared. We are programmed to not do things because I'm going to get fired at work and whatever. I got very excited when I was reading about the SCOs, safety contact officers. And then I could vision a safety contact officer on a set. Somebody gets harassed on set. Do I have the courage or the guts to go and approach. You said something about accessibility. We need to be able to access those people. I tend to think that when you are over 35, nobody thinks you can be trained. Because people who
youth.
are younger are trained, and yet they're working with their peers, and do they listen to each other?
Yeah.
We had this Living Legends fund that was happening that I'm following up now to find out what happened. Maybe the Mackenzie can go and dig to find out, if there's still money for it. But I kind of feel that you've got all these living legends that are out there doing nothing because there are no jobs. How about training them and disperse them into all those sets to be there? Because one, they are older. Two, they are experienced. Three, they are mothers and fathers. Four,
understand.
they have a voice, they will talk. Yes, we are winning, but I think we need to be able to go out there and include other people. It's a huge fight. It's a national fight. So it needs a huge number of people to be able to fight. Those perpetrators need to be scared. Need to be scared. Because they don't know who's looking and they don't know. And then you find a Tokonchinga who visits a set to say, hi guys, I've come to see whatever, can I mingle, can I whatever, knowing that something has been reported. So do these people that are abused manage to get to the officer? How? I think we need to go there to
How
say,
intimidated are they
yes,
on set?
how do we access these people? And how many of them are there, of the officers are there to be able to assist, I think.
Zanele, let me quickly go to you with this brilliant idea and maybe take it from there.
I think, Sis Togo, you are right. I actually think you're right in that for you as veterans in the industry, you are respected, number one, and you no longer have much to lose, so to speak, so it's easier. It would be easier for you to speak up and be able to assist and guide in this process. The challenge that we have is that the safety contact officers are there, who are even currently promoting, creating awareness around it. The issue comes back to the uptake of the safety contact officer program. And what we are asking for is nothing that is new. You look at the British Film Institute, you look at Netflix that works in this country on a number of productions. They have welfare officers on their productions because they've committed to the welfare of all the talent that is on their sets. What is preventing our broadcasters from doing the same? There are a lot more productions under SABC, and by the way, we're excited now that the SABC has started to push this, and we must say, they have over 400,
270
what
productions going at the
So they've already taken up this, and they're taking it forward. They are leading the way. As a national broadcaster, I think we need to give them that credit, that's happening, because that's going to open the way for the other platforms in the country. But what we're asking for is international best practice. Let's take care of the talent that makes it possible for us as broadcasters to make money, right? So that's what needs to happen. As you said, Lindy, we need the broadcasters to make that allocation in their budgets, because without the allocation, the producers cannot do much.
Yes.
So that is the only way we can access the safety contact officers, is if that funding is made available by the broadcasters, because they have a duty of care towards the talent that is working in the industry. That is the starting point. That is the starting point. And we need to encourage broadcasters, really. At this point, I keep saying encourage, because we're still unregulated. But the reality is that there is law in this country that says you've got to make sure that there is no harassment. You have to prevent the harassment. You have to work towards eliminating that harassment in the workplace. And that's what we need to be talking about, that we're not just asking for something because we feel like it's the right thing to do. Yes, it is definitely the right thing to do. However, the law in the country says, as an employer, as someone that is providing work, you have the responsibility, you have the duty of care to ensure that you eliminate and you prevent harassment in the workplace. So we're not asking for something that isn't already provided for in our law.
Ayanda, you spoke about social media impact. SWIFT has just conducted a survey on sexual harassment and safety contact officer. It's still running, so we don't have conclusive results. But the prelim report, I just want to mention 1 or 2 percentages here. It says 76% do not know about SCO. 63% know about intimate coordination. As a producer, why do you think, this picture emerges like this?
Thank you for that, Sister.
And I hope you've taken the survey. I hope everyone has taken the survey.
I think it's a great platform for us to actually encourage the audience who are here to take the survey. I know it is available and most of the content is accessible as well on the SWIFT social media platform. So when you do get an opportunity, please do go on there. And just to answer your question, Sis Lindy, I wouldn't say the access to information is the issue, because I think social media plays a great role currently from that. But I'll go back to what Sis Zanele perhaps said. How do we then bring in the broadcasters in the room? Because I feel if we were to have, for example, the training programs before SIT, and Onke spoke about it, that's the only way you raise awareness. As much as we can say social media, but we can't let go of normal traditional models. For example, simple thing like how do we then assist producers to ensure that in a production, the beginning of it does not even have to be for the whole duration of that. It could literally just be a workshop for 2 days, but taking through the crew on that. That's the only way that you can really create awareness as well, as much as we're reliant on social media. But social media is more about, if I'm reading about something and I'm in the industry, but I've not understood the in-depth of it, it is very challenging to then say, I do have access to it and I understand it fully, and I'm equipped to know that after I've read about it on social media, I know exactly that I can go to this database, I can contact this particular safety officer. So perhaps the question that I'm putting out there is, how do we then create those databases to say that if I want accessibility of a safety officer, this is where I then am able to reach onto this particular website. How do we then create that? And I think it starts with us. And it also starts, for example, with the producers, with the broadcasters, but I think that perhaps is a starting point.
Okay, my last question to you before I open to questions. SWIFT has got an MOU with NAVF, and this is one of the issues that we're trying to collaborate on. And I know that I think 4 or 5 years ago, NAVF has actually been requesting producers that are getting funding to, sign the code of good practice. How is that going? Is there an uptake on producers?
Look, there is uptake, but like I was saying to you, signing a code of good practice and following through on that are two different things, right? So it goes back to the thing about budget to say then where is the resource allocation for us even to make sure from our own M&E to make sure that there is uptake on that, right? Because it's one thing to have the safety contact officers there on whatever set they would be there on, but then it's another thing for then the NFF to have an extra layer of just observation to see, right? Are there different areas of, are there different instances where whatever code of good practice they would have committed to, is there negligence in that regard? Now, with that M&E process, that person themselves needs to be trained. They need to know what they're looking for. So it's such a cascading of training that is required, which is why I was talking about the aggressiveness. And I'm so glad Sis Togo mentioned this thing, because she's 100% right. If you're not youth in this country, you're presumed dead, right? And there's so many people that, like she's saying, are over 35 that are sitting at home that would be respected on a set, and people would think twice before they try to do something dubious that, whether intentionally or unintentionally, they do, right? I think for me, look, we're in a GNU. We've never been here before. So like you said before, you said you've tried these things, but you've hit a brick wall. I always think it's worth trying again, especially in the political climate we're in.
Yeah.
Because, and I'm going to make a very controversial statement, and my boss is in the audience, but she'll forgive me. But nothing in this country moves without political will.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
So why not leverage that? Because ultimately, the objective of these programs, the objective of what you're trying to do is to combat an issue in the country. It's a country issue. So it means that, police, it helps them. Social development, it helps them. Health, it helps them. Even basic education, it helps them from an from an educational perspective. Those are different departments that can have a shared mandate delivered through this one program.
100%.
So the GNU must GNU.
Yeah.
Leveraging this program.
100%. And we have put it to the minister.
Perfect. Wonderful.
Last week, So I'm going to open just 10 minutes. I don't know, I think we have 10 minutes left. I'd like to open up questions to the audience for my lovely panel. 1, 2, 3.
Hello. Hi, I'm Juliet. Firstly, ladies, thank you so much for an insightful talk. This was amazing. I'm going to try. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. So I was saying thank you so much for an insightful conversation. You all said so many amazing things. I actually want to ask anyone from SWIFT this question. Ayanda's statement actually gave me this idea. Do you guys approach universities to teach them about these different things? Because I've realized when I haven't been in varsity for 6 years, but when I was at university, I didn't actually know about SWIFT. The only thing I knew about sexual harassment was couchcasting, to be honest with you. And then I heard about you, unfortunately, on the second set that I was working on, someone got sexually harassed. And I'm wondering now, do you guys approach universities, because they are the people who are going to be in the industry, and I think it helps to teach them too what they can do, because the unemployment rate is very high, and they are the people who are going to come out and be unemployed, unfortunately, so they might do things out of desperation or get exploited because of the desperation. So is that something you guys have done or look into?
Okay, I'm going to take another one, and Zanele, maybe you can handle that one.
Hi, my name is Max. Ultimately, I wanted to ask the same question, but thank you so much, guys, for having this conversation. I was actually really excited to be here. Firstly, because it's not something that you would often hear people discuss out in public. So my first question was going to be what are you guys doing in universities or any tertiary institutions that are teaching young people about film and the film industry? And then another question I had was, as a young crew member, somebody who's a PA or a production managing assistant, where do we go for assistance if we don't know anything about SCOs? Yeah.
And you had your hand up here.
Hello, my name is Caitlin. Similarly, I guess, to the previous two questions, I wanted to ask, as a young filmmaker and someone who works as a producer and a director in the film industry as a student filmmaker, what can we be doing to make sets feel more safe and comfortable as people in those higher up positions, but still we're not funded and we're not, you know what I mean, we don't work for these big production companies, we don't have all of these budgets or anything like that. What can we be doing on a ground level to help people and make sets feel like a more comfortable and safe space?
Thank you, Zanele. I think you can handle the first two, and then this question I'll open up to all of you.
In terms of universities, and thank you very much for that question, because we do realize that we have to start educating before students even come into the industry. We've started talking last year. We had a session with VERTS. We've had a session with Tshwane University of Technology, and we are starting, to engage universities. So that is in the process itself. So we need to be signing MOUs with all of them. And most of the university also have some of them have work integrated learning programs that this is introduced at that stage, because that's the time when they are being introduced to the industry and they actually have to go out and work the necessary hours to qualify. So we have started that process. What would really help us is if everyone in here also speaks to, other talent on sets to spread the word, because we are a small team. In fact, mostly it's Lindy and myself that are working on this, so we need all the help to be able to reach as many people as possible. And then the second question was?
The second question was about contacting the SCO.
The SCO on productions at the moment. The first thing would be to make sure that there is a code of good practice. That would be the starting point, that you sign and it's attached to your contract. Because that's the first layer of protection for yourself. So
as a production.
You can, as a production, when you're on production, is to get that code of good practice, and that you can also get from Swift. A lot of producers, and Ayanda can speak to that, are already using the code of good practice. So if something then happens on set, the first reporting point is your HOD, because we still have to respect, those levels in terms of production. So you go to your HOD. If the HOD is not assisting you, then you contact Swift, because we then go back to the production and say, this is what is happening on your production. And we've been able to assist a lot of productions that have had issues on set, where the safety contact officers come in to mediate and to assist with whatever challenge there is on production with regards to sexual harassment.
I think that also answers your question. Am I correct? Yeah.
But if I can add to your question, I think one of the starting points, and it's very important that you mentioned the code of good practice, because you need to understand that even if there is a situation that happens on your set, it can go from 0 to 100 overnight, especially in the social media age that she was referring to, Ayanda was referring to. You also need, as an entity, as a production company, you need a level of recourse, right? You need some protection, because that document serves as, something for you to understand yourself, but also just like as a legal barrier for yourself. But I think an important thing to understand and to kind of relate to your team, especially the director, is that a safety contact officer, right? Be it a safety contact officer, be it an intimacy coordinator, obviously these people will work at different stages of the production. They are not there. They are there to help the director's vision come to life and not to derail it. Because sometimes the feeling is that this person is interfering with the process. And it's very important to make them understand that. It's like having a fight coordinator. If your production is an action and people must jump off ceilings and all of these things, it's the same thing. It's just focusing on a different aspect. Because a lot of the times, that's where you will hit the brick wall, where the director themselves, who essentially is supposed to be leading this process, is making it uncomfortable for that contact officer themselves. So then, you have that type of friction, and eventually, let's say if you really like working with this director, you kind of move away from having the contact officers on set because you would rather take the risk and have a certain director. So a lot of it is engagement at that level first, so that by the time you are in a position to have that on your set, it's already a welcoming environment. It's conducive towards that. It's not something that's alien, that's going to work against you.
Lindy,
We've
if
run
I
out of
may-
time,
Sorry,
and
have we run out of time? I just wanted to make that distinction between the intimacy coordinator
Yeah.
and the safety contact officer, because I think there may be confusion
Yeah.
in terms of those two. The intimacy coordinator works only on intimate scenes. They coordinate their directors and choreographers of intimate scenes. And the difference is that the safety contact officer is there across the entire production for anyone that is working on the production who may experience sexual harassment or witness sexual harassment. And those individuals, as I mentioned earlier, are trained counselors, and they are trained social workers so
Yeah.
that they can provide the necessary social
Throughout.
what?
Social support.
Psychosocial support. English has, my bundles have depleted. The necessary psychosocial support.
Yeah.
And I think that's the very important
Throughout.
distinction, is that the intimacy coordinator will not be able to assist you if you have to report sexual harassment, because they are not trained to provide you with that type of support. And the SCO contains and then refers. If it needs to go to a legal person, that's what they will do. If it needs to more counseling, that's what they will do. And they keep everything that you discuss with them confidential.
Confidential, yeah.
That's the main thing.
Thank you so much. I really wanted to give Umam Togo just 30 seconds to close this part.
30 seconds means whatever has been said is not easy. If you get harassed on set, it will not be easy. The first person you look at, you want to report, they look at you like, really? That lead actor harass a wardrobe assistant? Come on, man. It is never easy. So it's best when there is someone there. I love the fact that you said there should be a relationship between that office and the talent. There must be somebody you can talk to within that. We are here, guys, employers.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much to my